I'd rather teach you how to research and tell you about a stock pick. I'd rather you not take the word or even my word. I'd rather you know how to quantify and qualify.
Mm.
If you could do that, then you can have some way to build wealth for your family.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Richer Geek Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest, Kevin Davis. We're going to have him go through his background a little bit, but I bet we haven't had a Warner Brothers rap almost superstar, East Coast guy turned stockbroker, and of course he worked for the Wolf of Wall Street's famous Stratton Oakmont. And now he has his own app called Investment Dojo. The guy's done a little bit of everything. He's experienced a lot, and he's learned a lot. Welcome, Kevin Davis. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. I always start the podcast, but your background and how you got to where you are when you finally realize that, I need to do the Investment Dojo. But go through your background a little bit. It's very colorful. It's very exciting background.
Yeah, to say the least. So where does it start? It starts out when I get kicked out of my house at 17 years old, rites of passage. Mom goes, you know what? I got kicked out of my house when I was 17. You're no different. Get out. And so therefore I'm scurrying. I'm living from place to place. I bought a new car. That's probably what spurred it on. And she didn't have a new car. So that was hilarious at that point. I didn't find it so funny then. Anyway, so I'm staying with friends and bouncing around. And then my buddy says to me, you know what? You're really good at this rap thing. You should make a record. I'm like, I'm working part-time at UPS and going to college. And I'm like, rap? What do you mean? I'm in the park every week, doing my little battle rhymes because LL Cool J lived. So I was living in Queens at the time. I'm from Brooklyn, but LL Cool J lived in Hollis. I was in Springfield Gardens. And so Hollis was maybe 20 minutes by car away. So Run DMC was in Hollis, and you had all these rappers that germinated, it seems, from Queens. But anyway, so I started to, rap in the park. About maybe 3 years later, I wound up getting a record deal with Warner Brothers. I had a hit record, traveled around the world, did some things, and gained some experience outside of the neighborhood. I remember my first time getting on a plane. I was terrified, and I flew 5 times in one weekend, which was my first introduction. So I'm surprised I still get on planes to this day. Anyway, and the music career was great, but then when it was over, I realized that, I made a ton of money in the music business. I was making like 90 grand a month as a 21-year-old. It didn't click because back then you got what is this, the 80s, early 90s? It's 89 the record came out, so it was really 89, 90. So that was a decent amount of money at that time.
Yeah.
And then I saw this movie, Trading Places.
Yeah.
And I said, ooh, $1. I want to do that. And I didn't know it was commodities. I thought it was, I had no clue. So meanwhile, my grandmother lived in Kew Gardens, Queens. And I'm sitting in front of her house in my car. And my next door neighbor, her neighbor, sitting on the step, and she saw me looking at the wanted ad. She said, well, what are you looking at? I said, I'm looking at these stockbroker ads. It says you can make X amount of dollars. And I was like, no, well, you can come work for me. Well, get my job. I was like, okay. And she took me to Stratton Oakmont.
Wow.
Yeah. And the interview was even more nuts. Bobby Koch. Bobby Koch pulls me to the side. He interviews me in the cafeteria. And he says, well, what makes you think you could be a stockbroker? The funny thing about me is I had a little street decorum, so he did not scare me. So I stood up and said, what makes you can be a stockbroker? And he laughed. And I was just tough. I was rough around the edges. I don't think I was speaking the King's English, but he saw something, and He hired me on the spot, and I think I got there 5 a.m, and I stood all day till about 9 o'clock at night, and sometimes to 12, and they loved me for it. But I know no better. Yeah, so that's the first part. That's how I got to the Wall Street from the music.
It's unbelievable. I mean, what a story! It's like, right place at the right time. It's absolutely unbelievable. So you're doing this, and then you go to another small research shop, and then you're building up your experiences. And then 25 years later, what clicked? It's just said, you know what? I need to do Investment Dojo. I need to.
What clicked was so I got tired of Wall Street. I was there when the .com blew up, and then I decided that I wanted to move to Florida in 2005. And my firm, the research firm where I really learned how to really do the research on stocks based on free cash flow, business models, all this good stuff. They allowed me to work for a few months in Florida without supervision. I didn't want to take my 24 and become a principal. And then I found that, I had an interest in mortgages. So I decided to open a mortgage company. I went to work for a small firm for 6 months. And then because of the stockbroker side of me, we cold called every day like animals. So it was so easy to get business. I mean, I would get like 20 mortgages in a day. It was just nuts because refinance was big and people's mortgages were going up from like 6% to 10. So it was easy to get them to do refinances. And I knew where to find them. I knew how to get them on the phone. I knew how to write a script. So that was cool. Did that for, I guess, I want to say 3 years. Made a ton of money doing that. Then that went out of business. So then I went to a insurance company who said, you can have your own franchise as a unionized shop if I write X amount of dollars. So I wrote extra amount of dollars and I got my own franchise. And I moved from Florida to DC. I didn't want to move, but I did. And I was a state general agent for Maryland, DC, West Virginia, Northern Virginia. And, I did that. I knocked the ball off the cover and I retired in 2016, right? Came back to Florida 2017. And then I'd realized something. I remember calling my buddy. It was I think it was 2014. I think Apple had split 7-for-1. And I said to him, listen, you should get some Apple. He was like, man. And this time he was managing ASAP Rocky, which is, Rihanna's, So I was like, yeah, that's what I would do. And it was like $94 a share. I couldn't do it. It was 94. Oh, don't worry. I was recommending Apple at 18 and 95. I left that out. But anyway, so I couldn't do it because my expenses were $22K a month and I was running the business. So I couldn't, any free cash flow was going into the business. You know what that is. So when I retired in 2016 and came to Florida again, I said, you know what? My wealth is inside of me. I remember walking through the house. It was like, my wealth is inside of me. And then this light bulb went off. And it was like, okay, start researching again. So I started researching stocks. And all of a sudden I was I must have picked up 11 stocks. And out of 11, like 8 or 9 of them tripled. But it was because we were in the biggest bull market from 2008 going forward. Right. So this is 2017. So we really didn't get any hiccups until like into 18, 19. Right. So I told my friends, they were pushing me to teach and coach. And I was like, no, and no, and no. So when the pandemic hit, everybody said, okay, what are you going to do? I said, because my son was 2 years old. And I was like, I retired. So I was pretty okay financially, but I said, okay, I'll start the group. So I started the group, Investment Dojo. I had already had the incorporation 2019, and the group went from 29 members to like 6,000 overnight. And I got this reputation because I always tell people, I'd rather teach you how to research and tell you about a stock pick. I'd rather you not take the word or even my word. I'd rather you know how to quantify and qualify. If you could do that, then you can have some way to build wealth for your family. If not, it doesn't make sense to take. It's like the movie Dumb and Dumbest or Dumber, Dumb and
Dumb
Dumber.
and Dumber.
Yeah. If you listen to them, you're the dumbest, right? So
Yeah.
it was like, don't take the word of somebody. And so the light bulb went off for me in 2016, 17, and it's been charging, and it led up to this moment.
So let's talk about Investment Dojo. Okay. We've kind of hinted about, we've kind of talked about it. What is it?
Okay.
And explain to me the concept behind the education part and what are the different levels of Investment Dojo. What's in it.
Okay. So if from face value, it's an app, right? And it's a simulator, stock simulator, right? And it's moderated by me and my team. So what does that mean? So let's just talk about what is the app first and some of the features, and then I'll get into the moderation.
Okay.
So, you have group chats. You can play in a public room. You can play in a private room. You can play against 100 people or 1,000 people, friends or family, whatever the case may be. We moderate the game, so you can reach out to us. We teach you how to play the games. When we moderate, we do master classes. So we'll teach you about the bond market, your 401ks. We'll teach you about the daily macro and micro environment in the stock market, as well if you're in a moderated game. And so I use it as a vehicle to teach, but then I became a financial coach. So what happens is it's become my filter too. So unlike most people who have a product and want to sell something, I kind of try hard not to. I only want to deal with the people that I really, really want to help. It's a different, I don't know, it's just me, right? But it becomes a filter of some sorts. But it allows me to really impact a lot of people. And I started it in 2020 because we were playing on an app called Investopedia. And Investopedia has a simulator, and their simulator was doing good for a second. I had 21 games with them, but then the game went down. So my buddy was like, Kevin, why don't you finance your own app? I was like, oh, makes sense, I guess. And so my wife, who's a marketing, guru, she goes, well, I'll find you the company. So she found me the company, and they told me 6 months, but it took 3. And when it comes down to the app itself, it's been a vehicle for people to learn the market. But what I found is that people have so much fun competing and learning at the same time. They forget their inhibition and apprehension to the stock market. And at the end, it builds a habit. So I put on 2-week competitions. So, and at the end of that competition, if they qualify, they can get into coaching if they want to get into coaching. If not, they can continue to do what they're doing and keep learning in a process. And I do meetings every Wednesday on the page for them. And it's just it's as they call it, it's immersive and it's wildly educational.
Absolutely. And it seems like, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I mentioned this to a financial advisor who's doing well. And I was like, you should check this out. And he was talking about, it was finally a concept that kind of went off in his head that he could teach his middle school age children how to live. This is the real world. This is what happens. And, you keep hearing me. He was like, you keep hearing me yell and scream about the stock market and all these different things. And well, this is exactly what it is and why we're doing this. So, talk about the importance of not only for just people getting educated about this, but it's also something that parents can do with their children. It's a bonding time. It's a learning experience, education. Talk to a little bit about how it can affect the entire family dynamic.
Yeah, everything's about family. Everything I do is purpose drilled. About my son and my daughter. So, if you're playing with your children, the one thing about the market is no day is the same. So you'll never get bored. And it's so competitive. And once you know how to play, like we have these games that are 15-minute lags. We play with a 15-minute window. You can play in real time, but you got to be decent to do that. But playing with a 15-minute window allows you to see the market in advance. So if Apple's trading at $200 on the app and it's trading at 218 in the market, you could buy it in the market on the app at 200 and sell it 10 minutes later at 218. So now you don't have to be good at the market. So what's happening is you're just finding and exploiting. So people go, well, how do you learn? Easy. Stocks go up for a reason and they go down for a reason. And your job is to find out why. And then when in that course of finding out why, we tell you where to go. Investors relations pages, do this, do that. Okay, this is how you look at where the next earnings are coming out. Yahoo Finance, 16 analysts are following them, revenue expectation, earnings expectation. And they're getting this information while they're playing. Right.
Wow.
So now if it's during earnings season, they know how to go to Yahoo Finance, go to markets and see the calendar and see what's happening. And so it's just about market awareness, knowing what it is. And then like Peter Lynch is a big, he's one of my heroes in the market. Right. So buy what you know is his main mantra and make it simple, make it so a 7-year-old can understand it. So I always say baby food it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, my thing is monetize what you patronize. So if your kid is spending all his time on his phone, do you own Apple? If you're and not say to go out and buy Apple, do some research, make it make sense. But when you're looking at YouTube all day, do you own Google? If he's got a computer all day in front of him, he's always writing whatever, do you own Microsoft? Right? If he's on ChatGPT, does he own Microsoft? Right? There's all these little different things, and you can center allowance around these things too, which is so cool because what happens is you can create a point system that says, okay, your chores and your duties to be fulfilled are going to give you 20 points, and every point equates to $5 or $1 or $2, whatever the case you want to do, right? And you'll never get all of the money if you hit all of the points, meaning let's say it's $100 a point, right? 1 point up to $100. $50 is going to go to you, right? But the other 50 is going to go to the things called investment, right? So this way you're working, you're learning, and we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss these things because we have to sit down and decide what our free cash flow is going to go to. So our free cash flow is the extra $50, right? What's for me is the $50. Now, when you get into the real world, it's going to be different. You're going to have to take a third of your money, right? Each dollar, a third, and you can put that on the side, another third, pay your bills, another third. Well, you can have the life that you want. Just live your life with it, right? Or you could take 2/3 and plan to work hard up front so you can have the life you want later. It depends on how you want to do it. You make the choice. But it's so many lessons there. But this all spawns from Investment Dojo because I push this narrative, right? Because it's like I always tell people, I come from a standpoint of want, not need. So I'm always going to be pushing the education because I did not know I remember I thought Johnson & Johnson was baby powder. I didn't know what stock.
That's true.
Yeah. So it's funny how we think about it, but it took me so long to get around to this is important, to actually using the information. I was an order taker in the first 10 years of being a stockbroker. I wasn't researching. I wasn't bringing them my ideas. They were telling me this made sense, gave me a report, and this is what I brought to my clients. Once I realized that I knew, wow, okay, growing at 25% CAGR, this earnings, oh, wow, free cash flow, free, and I can factor it out based on the yield. I was like, wait a minute. Wow, I actually know how to do this. And when I discovered that made more sense and it made a lot of money, it's like, listen, like the kids are in very nice positions financially because I learned. As soon as they got a social security card, we're going to open up a stock account, a custodial account. And it's going to be every single month. It's a no look pass.
Wow.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just teaching them instead of like going, I want, give me. Like the kids now today, it's like, we won't get started in that, but it's entitlement, right? So if you teach them at a young age that this is how life works, and this is how you get money, this is how you keep money, this is how you respond to situations. I mean, this is just an absolutely fantastic, I don't know, the original reason why you did this Investment Dojo, but, just the implications that it can have for generations. throughout the United States and perhaps the world, just teaching, hey, this is the U.S. stock market. This is how you do things. Where do you see this in 5 years? What is when you think about Investment Dojo?
Oh boy. So it's platforms upon platforms. So it's, as I said to one of my buddies, very smart. I mean, super smart guy. There's no university. People don't learn this in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to be the app. It's like the Angie's list of investing, where you go to find out about the stock market and you get the resources as well. So later on, I have this Rolodex of financial advisors, all vetted, right? Real estate guys, all vetted. And I mean, when I say vetted, I mean vetted. Because if it comes from the source, it's got to be right. Like your estate attorneys, and building out an educational platform that allows people to say, okay, well, I don't want to be in probate, so I need to have my trust.
Yep.
Right. Well, I have a kid. My child is autistic, so one of them are. And so I need to make sure I have a special needs trust. And so I got to make sure that, knowing it's one thing not to know, right? But then when you know and don't do, well, that's negligence, right? And if you have children, you know how our heart is on the other end of we wear it on our sleeve for our children. So if you have children, you breathe to make sure they're okay. So you have to get the information and do so. So I just try to make it as available and as easy to understand. And, because information is already threatening enough. So the delivery and method makes sense. So, and just walk people through. I have people that are doing extremely well. I'm a financial coach along with it. But I always tell people, I can't tell you what to buy. I can only tell you what I'm buying for my son. But here's the reality. I'm going to teach you how to research it. Yeah. If you decide to buy it, you better know what you're buying, because I know what I own. Right. And so accountability, like I tell people, if it happens wrong, it's my fault. If it happens right, it's my fault. It's called accountability. It's my fault. So I'm either going to fail on purpose or I'm going to be successful on purpose. So that's and then they get that whole thing too, because I think we're in a time where we're pointing fingers, and it's the Me Too and it's the emotional. Well, here's the reality. I don't watch the news for that reason, but the main thing is that I'm so busy doing research. I'm always looking for something that's going to I always tell people, are chasing their tail. I'm moving forward. I'm just taking steps while people keep running in circles. That's all. And I'm not better than, I'm just trying to better myself. So if I can help people, it's like I recommended the 7 Successful Habits, I think it was. What book was that? Last night. I forgot the name of the book. It's a really good book. It talks about masterminding by Carnegie. But it's just one of those things where just having your circle and giving them a place to have a role model, so to speak, of what they should know, what they should do, and where they should start. And the last thing I'll say is this. My friends came, this is one of my good friends. He inspired my buddy, John Sparby. He inspired me to do this. He's also a state general agent. And he goes, Kev, I got $300K. I want to learn what you're learning. I said, well, here's what you're going to do, buddy. See this thing called Vanguard? You're going to go find yourself a financial advisor. If you want to know what I'm doing, take 10%, not 10%. Ooh, no, take 2% of that. And then I'll help you learn what I'm doing. But I can't tell you what to do. You got to be responsible for that. He's like, okay. I outperform his Vanguard guy every
time. We've been talking a lot about the children, a lot about legacies and things like that. You have a book. It's called Who's Your Daddy?
Yeah.
What prompted that? And tell us a little bit about that book.
So that was an emotional journey. My first son, at 51 years of age, I decided to have my first child. He's 6 now. And I was saying to myself, God forbid something should happen to me before this guy turns to a young man, 18 years old, right? So I said, let me write down my life story, all my financial fixes, everything that I've learned. I've owned a mortgage company. I've owned an insurance company. I've been a stockbroker. And so I said, let me give him all these financial doorways. And I wrote all of those. I wrote the personal part of me so he understood who his father was and what he went through, the struggle, the relationship with my mother and my stepdad, who became like my real dad because I never knew my dad. And so I didn't like him in the beginning, which is crazy. And so it was a story of how, and I bring up that point for a reason, because it's about maturity. My dad was my stepdad, but my dad was 30 years old when he met my mom. And at 30 years old, when you think of a 30-year-old these days, oh my God, they're not mature. No. They're crazy. Right. So but at 50 something years old, he was like this amazing difference. I couldn't stand him from 30 on to then. And then all of a sudden I found myself where I needed to reconnect with a male figure, and it was him. And he helped me get my cars. He helped me get my life right. It's like the maturity in it. And he reached out for his son. And so I wanted him to see that relationship. So I wrote that. I wanted him to see me fail forward. He saw me conquer a lot of different things, but I wanted to see me fail forward. So he knew that was a real thing. Right. The relationship with my mom was turbulent, but we did. I took care of her. So we made sure he saw that as well. So the book became a financial journey and a biography at the same time, and it writes the passage story. So it's a pretty cool book. Everybody raves about it.
Wow. I mean, it's you get goosebumps just even thinking about it. It just had to have been such a, just physical, mental, emotional, spiritual journey, all those wrapped in together, put down in words. And that's fantastic. Before I let you go, is there anything, sometimes I miss things. Mm-hmm. What have I missed that you would love to share with our listeners? Something that, about Dojo, about the book, about life, lessons learned, anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to share?
No, I think we hit it all. I guess the only message I would leave is that, you got to play with the scoreboard and the time clock. And what I mean is I look at it like, okay, so I'm 57. If you look at it in terms of days, if you live to 80, you get 29,200, right? So if I did my math, if I take the 23 years from now until 80, I have 8,395 days left. I got to live them to the fullest. And then the part about this is don't get so wrapped up chasing money, because you have a health scoreboard too. And if you don't check into that, I don't care how much money you have. You can't buy yourself out of death.
That's right.
So you got to make sure you take care of yourself too. So, pay attention. It's more to life than money and chasing things. So just, if you're going to do it, build it on purpose. That's why I say, I live life on purpose, if that makes sense.
It does. One of my mottos that's over my desk is build a life that you don't need a vacation from. And that's I see that every day. And it's like, look, it's not about the money. The money will come if you do things properly. Correct. But what's more important? Spending time with family, spending time. I can work anywhere in the world that I want to. And it's just the stress release and doing things without just constantly, being scared about what's going on, in the life, paranoid, exactly, offended, all those things. But Kevin, where can people? So people are like, oh, wow, I want to do this. I want to do this. How can people find you? What is the website?
So the website is investmentdojo.com, but you can find me on Facebook, investmentdojo.com. Investment Dojo Facebook. What is it? TikTok, Investment Dojo. On YouTube, Investment Dojo. I'm pretty easy. If you want to get involved with one of the contests, you can just join the Facebook group. I post them every single month, and you'll be able to take advantage of a moderated game.
Perfect. Kevin, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and having you on this episode. Everybody, this concludes another episode of the Richer Geek Podcast. Check it out, Investment Dojo. I think you learn so much. I'm going to check it out myself. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.